The rain had finally stopped by the time they lowered Chief Obinna Okafor's casket into the red earth of Enugu. Chidinma stood between her two brothers, her eyes swollen from crying, her black wrapper clinging to her slim frame. At 25, she was the youngest of Chief Okafor's 3 children and the only daughter. To her left stood Chinedu, the firstborn son. 30 years old, tall and muscular with a full beard. He wore an expensive white agbada embroidered with gold thread. His face was stone, his eyes dry. To her right was Ikenna, 28, shorter but powerfully built with broad shoulders and a perpetual scowl. He wore a brown senator's suit and stared at the grave without expression. Their father had been a respected man, wealthy, feared, loved. Chief Obinna Okafor had built himself from nothing, rising from the dusty streets of Enugu to own farmlands across 3 states, construction sites in Abuja, and rental properties throughout the southeast. He was 67 when his heart finally gave out. The funeral was massive. Women in colorful iro and bubo wailed traditional mourning songs. Men in agbada stood in respectful clusters. Children with red dust on their bare feet ran between crowds. People ate jollof rice from giant pots and spoke in hushed tones about the great man's legacy. But when evening came and the compound finally quieted, a message arrived that changed everything. Barrister Nwosu, Chief Okafor's longtime lawyer, sent word that the reading of the will would take place the next morning at 9 o'clock. Chinedu's reaction should have warned Chidinma, but she was too deep in grief to notice. He simply nodded once, his jaw tight. Ikenna looked at the ground for a long time, saying nothing. Chidinma didn't think about it. Her mind was still at the graveside with her father. The next morning, the 3 siblings sat in Barrister Nwosu's modest office in Enugu. The room smelled of old paper and furniture polish. A ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, doing little against the humid heat. Chinedu wore his best native attire, white agbada with gold embroidery that caught the light. Ikenna wore a brown senator outfit, his expression unreadable. Chidinma had chosen a simple blue wrapper and white blouse, her shoulder-length braids pulled back with scarf. She looked exhausted. Barrister Nwosu entered with 2 assistants carrying a brown folder. He was an older man with gray hair and glasses that sat low on his nose. He greeted them respectfully, adjusted his glasses, and cleared his throat. "I know this is a difficult time," he began, his voice gentle but professional. "Your father was very specific about his wishes." He opened the folder and pulled out the official document. According to Chief Obinna Okafor's last will and testament, dated 6 months before his death. He paused, looking at each of them. His entire estate, all farmlands, construction sites, rental properties, investments, and bank accounts, has been left his daughter, Chidinma Okafor. The world stopped. The ceiling fan seemed to freeze mid-rotation. The air became thick, suffocating. Chinedu's head snapped toward the lawyer. "What?" "Everything," Barrister Nwosu continued carefully, "has been bequeathed to Miss Chidinma Okafor as a sole beneficiary." Chidinma couldn't breathe. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair. "That's impossible," Ikenna said, his voice low and dangerous. "I assure you, the will is legally binding and properly witnessed. Did you know about this?" Chinedu turned to Chidinma, his eyes blazing with fury. "What? No." Chidinma found her voice. I had no idea. You planned this." Chinedu stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You manipulated Papa before he died." "That's not true." Chidinma stood as well, her heart pounding. "I would never." "So you think you deserve everything?" Ikenna rose slowly, his voice trembling with rage. "You? A woman?" The words cut deeper than any blade. Barrister Nwosu tried to intervene. "Gentlemen, please, your father made this decision of sound mind, if you wish to contest." "We're leaving," Chinedu said coldly. He turned to Chidinma, and the look in his eyes made her blood run cold. It wasn't the look of a brother. It was the look of an enemy. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Both brothers stormed out. The door slammed so hard that papers fluttered on the lawyer's desk. Chidinma sank back into her chair, trembling. "I didn't know," she whispered. I swear I didn't know. Barrister Nwosu looked at her with concern. Miss Chidinma, your father was very clear. He wanted you to have everything. He said. The lawyer hesitated. He said you were the only one he could trust. Why? Chidinma's voice broke. Why would he do this? I don't know his full reasoning, but I suggest you be very careful. Your brothers. He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. That night, Chidinma couldn't sleep. She lay in her childhood bedroom in the family compound, staring at the ceiling. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. Around midnight, she heard voices outside her window. Low, angry voices. She crept to the window and peered through the curtain. Chinedu and Ikena stood in the courtyard, speaking in urgent whispers. She couldn't hear everything, but she caught fragments. Can't let her keep it all. Tomorrow morning, the river? No one will know. Chidinma's heart began to pound. The river? What did they mean? She watched as her brothers clasped hands, nodded to each other, and disappeared into the darkness. Sleep didn't come that night. Chidinma lay awake, a terrible feeling growing in her chest. Something had shifted in her brothers. Something dangerous. She thought about her father's face the last time she'd seen him alive. He'd been weak, struggling to breathe, but he'd taken her hand and whispered something she hadn't understood at the time. Be careful, NWM. Trust no one. Now, lying in the darkness, listening to the night sound of Enugu, Chidinma finally understood. Her father had known something. He'd known his sons couldn't be trusted. That's why he'd left everything to her. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that by morning her own brothers would try to kill her, and it would happen at the river. She inherited everything and her brothers got nothing. If you already feel the danger coming, smash that like button and subscribe to Africantales by Zion. Drop a comment. Would you fear your own siblings if this happened? The next chapter shows what her brothers did, and it's horrifying. Share this video. Turn on notifications. Chidinma woke to pounding on her door. Sunlight streamed through the window. It was already morning. She'd finally fallen asleep just before dawn. Chidinma? Ikena's voice called through the door. Wake up. We need to talk. She sat up quickly, her heart already racing. The memory of their whispered conversation last night flooded back. About what? She called, trying to keep her voice steady. About father's land by the river. We need to settle this inheritance matter properly. Chidinma hesitated. Everything in her body screamed danger. But these were her brothers, the men who had carried her on their backs when she was a child. Surely they wouldn't actually hurt her. Give me a moment, she said. She dressed quickly in a light blue wrapper and matching blouse, braided her shoulder-length hair, and stepped outside. Chinedu and Ikena stood waiting by their father's old Mercedes. Both wore serious expressions, but their voices were calm. We spoke harshly yesterday, Chinedu said. We were shocked, but we're family. We should discuss this properly. There's a good spot by the riverbank, Ikena added. Quiet. We can talk without the whole compound listening. Chidinma wanted to refuse, wanted to run, but shame held her in place. What would people say if she ran from her own brothers? All right, she heard herself say. They drove in silence through the red dirt roads of Enugu. The morning was cool and misty. Farmers walked along the roadside with hoes over their shoulders. Children in school uniforms clustered at bus stops. Chidinma sat in the back seat, watching her brothers' heads in front of her. Chinedu drove. Ikena stared out the window. Neither spoke. The knot in Chidinma's stomach tightened with every kilometer. They turned off the main road onto a narrow bush path. Trees closing on both sides. The car bounced over rocks and roots. Then they emerged at a clearing. The Niger River stretched wide and brown before them. But they weren't at the gentle bank where women washed clothes and children played. They were at the high cliff, a dangerous overhang where the land dropped away sharply into deep, churning water below. Why are we here? Chidinma asked, her voice small. The land father left you. Chinedu said, getting out of the car. Some of it borders this river. We wanted to show you. They walked toward the edge. Chidinma's heels sank into the soft red soil with each step. The morning breeze was cold against her skin, making her light blue wrapper flutter. See there? Ikenna pointed across the river. That's the western boundary. Chidinma stepped closer to look, her heart pounding. She was now standing at the very edge of the cliff. Below, the river rushed past, at least 20 feet down. The water looked dark and angry. Chinidu, I think we should... She never finished the sentence. Both brothers moved at once. Chinidu's leg slammed into her chest. Ikenna's foot hit her stomach. The impact was brutal, professional, coordinated. Chidinma's body flew backward into empty air. For a split second, she was weightless. The sky above her was impossibly blue. Her brothers' faces grew smaller, cold, angry, unbothered. Her mouth opened to scream, but shock had stolen her voice. No sound came out. Then she was falling, falling, falling. The world spun. Wind rushed past her ears. Her braids whipped around her face. The last thing she heard before hitting the water was Chinidu's voice, cold and clear. Let her drown. And Ikenna's response, we must finish what we started. Then she hit the river. The water struck her like a stone wall. It swallowed her whole, dragging her down into cold darkness. Chidinma sank deep, deeper than she thought possible. Her lungs burned immediately. Her eyes stung from the river water. Her light blue wrapper became heavy, dragging her down like an anchor. Her mind screamed at her body to move, to swim, to fight. But shock paralyzed her limbs for precious seconds. When she finally began to struggle, kicking her legs and pulling with her arms, the river fought back. The current was stronger than she'd imagined. It pulled at her like it had hands. Her heels slipped off her feet, disappearing into murky depths. Her braids floated around her face, blinding her. Water rushed into her nose and mouth when she tried to breathe. Above, through the rippling surface, she could see light, but it seemed impossibly far away. Her chest tightened. Her legs kicked weaker. The weight of her soaked wrapper pulled her down. She opened her mouth involuntarily, and water rushed in. It burned like fire down her throat. Panic seized her completely now. Her arms flailed. Her vision blurred. Darkness crept in from the edges. And through it all, one thought repeated in her mind. My own brothers. My own blood. They want me dead. The betrayal hurt worse than the drowning. Her body became heavy. Her movement slowed. She felt herself sinking lower, lower, until the surface looked like a distant sky she'd never reach. A small part of her consciousness remained, praying desperately. God, please, not like this. Not by betrayal. Not by the hands of my own mother's sons. But the river kept pulling. Her heartbeat slowed. Her thoughts faded. Numbness spread through her limbs. The world went dark. And just when Chidinma thought death had finally claimed her, she felt it. A hand, strong and warm, grabbing her arm from below. Someone was pulling her up, through the darkness, through the water, through the burning in her lungs. Someone was dragging her toward the surface. Chidinma's fading consciousness couldn't understand it. Was it her father's spirit? An angel? The hand pulled harder, faster. She felt herself rising through the water. Her face broke the surface, and air rushed into her lungs with a painful gasp. She coughed violently, water spilling from her mouth. Strong arms wrapped around her, keeping her afloat. Hold on. A deep voice said in her ear, I've got you. Chidinma's vision was too blurred to see who held her. Everything was spinning, bright, loud. She coughed again and again, her body convulsing as it expelled the river water. Her chest ached. Her throat burned. The arms carried her toward the shallow bank, water splashing around them. When they reached the muddy shore, the man laid her gently on the ground. Cool morning air hit her soaked skin. Chidinma coughed harder, rolling onto her side. More water came up. Her whole body shook uncontrollably. Breathe, the voice said, slowly. You're safe now. As her vision cleared, Chidinma finally saw her rescuer. He was a dark-skinned man in his early 30s, muscular from years of physical work, with short, twisted hair and a scar across his left cheek. He wore simple clothes, worn trousers and a faded shirt, and his hands were calloused from labor. She recognized him. Obiora, the fisherman who lived near the river, the quiet man who sold fresh tilapia in the village market. Chichidinma, Obiora said, breathing hard himself. Who did this to you? She tried to speak, but her throat was too raw. Only a whisper came out. My brothers. Obiora's face darkened immediately. He looked up at the high cliff where she'd fallen, his jaw tightening with rage. For a moment, Chidinma thought he would climb up there to confront them. But then he looked back at her, saw how badly she was shaking, and made a decision. You're hurt. We need to get you somewhere safe. He looked around quickly. Your brothers will think you drowned. We need to keep it that way, or they'll come back to finish what they started. Chidinma's mind was still spinning, but she understood. If Chinidu and Ikena knew she'd survived, they would try again. Obiora lifted her carefully in his arms. She was too weak to walk, and carried her away from the riverbank toward a small hut hidden among the tall grasses and palm trees. As they moved further from the river, Chidinma looked back once at the high cliff. Her brothers were gone. They had left her to drown and walked away. And somehow that hurt more than the river ever could. Her own brothers kicked her off a cliff into the river. They tried to drown her for the inheritance. If you can't believe this betrayal, smash that like button and subscribe to Africantales by Zion. Comment, who do you think grabbed her underwater? The next chapter reveals a miraculous rescue and the secret her father was hiding. Share this video. Turn on notifications. Obiora's hut was small but clean, a mud structure with a zinc roof, surrounded by tall grass and palm trees. Colorful calabashes hung from wooden posts outside. The smell of smoked fish and river breeze filled the air. He pushed aside the cloth curtain that served as a door and carried Chidinma inside, laying her gently on a wooden bed covered with a faded wrapper. She was shivering violently, her teeth chattering. Her soaked blue wrapper clung to her skin. Water dripped from her braids onto the earthen floor. Don't move, Obiora said firmly. I'll get something warm. He left briefly and returned with a thick brown wrapper that smelled of smoke. He wrapped it around her shoulders carefully, then handed her a small calabash filled with warm herbal drink. Drink this slowly, he instructed. The liquid was bitter but soothing. It warmed her chest and throat. Gradually, her violent shaking reduced to trembling. Obiora sat on a small wooden stool beside the bed, watching her closely. His brow was furrowed with concern. Chidinma, he said quietly, why would your own brothers try to kill you? She swallowed hard, her voice still hoarse. My father, he left everything to me. All his wealth, all his properties, everything. Obiora's eyes widened. Everything. She nodded, tears gathering. They got nothing. Yesterday the lawyer read the will. Today they... Her voice broke. Today they pushed me off the cliff. Obiora leaned back, rubbing his palm over his face. They wanted you gone completely. Hearing someone else say it made the reality crash down on Chidinma again. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Obiora let her cry for a moment, then spoke softly. Your father must have had a reason. A man like Chief Okafor doesn't disinherit his sons without cause. I don't know why, Chidinma whispered. He never explained. Before Obiora could respond, they both heard footsteps outside. Heavy footsteps, approaching fast. Obiora's head snapped toward the door. He held up a hand, signaling Chidinma to be silent. Then they heard it, a voice, deep, official, speaking Igbo. Is anyone in there? I'm looking for Chidinma Okafor. Obiora moved to the curtain cautiously. Who are you? Officer Adeyemi, Enugu Police Division. I have an urgent message for Miss Okafor. Obiora hesitated, then glanced back at Chidinma. She nodded weakly. He pushed the curtain aside. A tall police officer, in a slightly worn brown uniform, stood outside. He was dark-skinned, middle-aged, with kind eyes that seemed honest. He carried a brown envelope. Miss Okafor is here, he asked. She's recovering from an accident. Obiora said carefully. I know what happened. Officer Adeyemi said grimly. I saw her brother's car. driving away from the river this morning. They were laughing. His face hardened. I knew something was wrong. He stepped inside and saw Chidinma on the bed, wrapped in the brown cloth, her hair still wet. "Miss Chidinma," he said respectfully, removing his cap. "Your father asked me to give you this if anything ever happened to him. He said if you were in danger, I should find you immediately." He held out the brown envelope. It was heavy, slightly torn at the edges, sealed with red wax bearing her father's signet ring. Chidinma's hand shook as she took it. "He gave this to you when?" she asked. 6 months ago, the same day he changed his will. He said, "Adeyemi, my sons are walking into darkness. If they try to harm my daughter, she must know the truth." Chidinma's breath caught. Her father had known. 6 months ago, he'd known his sons would try to kill her. Officer Adeyemi looked around nervously. "I must go. Your brothers have eyes everywhere." But Miss Chidinma read that letter carefully. "And whatever you do, don't let them find you until you understand what your father was protecting." He left quickly, disappearing into the bush. Chidinma stared at the envelope in her trembling hands. Obiora moved closer. "Open it," he said gently. With shaking fingers, she broke the wax seal and pulled out the contents. Inside were 3 things: a handwritten letter in her father's familiar slanted script, photocopies of land documents, and a small flash drive. Tears blurred her vision as she unfolded the letter. "My daughter Chidinma, if you are reading this, then my fears have come true. Your brothers have moved against you. I gave you the full inheritance not because I love them less, but because you are the only one with a clean heart. Chinedu and Ikenna have been mixing with dangerous men, criminals who want the land I kept hidden for years. That land holds something those evil men will kill for. I discovered it 5 years ago and told no one, not even you. But they found out somehow. They came to me, threatened me, demanded I hand over the documents. When I refused, they began working on your brothers, promising them wealth if they betrayed their own family. The land contains valuable mineral deposits, rare earth elements worth billions of naira. Foreign mining companies and corrupt government officials want it. They'll stop at nothing. I'm entrusting everything to you because you have wisdom, patience, and integrity. But you must be careful. Go to Officer Adeyemi if you need help. He's the only officer I trust. And Chidinma, know that I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you this while alive. I thought keeping you ignorant would keep you safe. I was wrong. Protect yourself. Protect the land. And never trust your brothers again. They've sold their soul for money they haven't even received yet. Your father, Chief Obinna Okafor." The letter slipped from Chidinma's hands. She couldn't breathe. Minerals, billions of naira, criminal syndicates. Her brothers were working with dangerous men who'd promised them wealth for eliminating her. "What does it say?" Obiora asked quietly. Chidinma's voice came out hollow. "My father discovered mineral deposits on the land, worth billions. Criminals want it. They paid my brothers to kill me." Obiora's face went dark with fury. "Your own brothers sold you for money?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Before either could speak again, they heard new sounds outside. Voices, multiple voices, angry, searching. Chidinma's blood turned to ice. She must be around here somewhere. Chinedu's voice rang out close, too close. "The fisherman's tracks are fresh." "If she's alive," Ikenna replied. "We finish it today. No mistakes this time." Obiora immediately moved a window, peering out carefully. His face paled. "Your brothers," he whispered. "And they're not alone. There are 3 other men with them. They're carrying machetes." Chidinma's heart stopped. They brought help. They were serious about killing her. Obiora turned to her urgently. "There's a trap door under this mat. Storage pit. You need to hide. Now." "What about you?" she whispered. "I'll distract them." "But Chidinma," he grabbed her shoulders. "If they find you, they will kill both of us. Do you understand?" She nodded, terror making her numb. Obiora quickly lifted the woven mat, revealing a wooden trapdoor. He pulled it open to show a small pit lined with soil, smelling of smoked fish and earth. "Get in. Don't make a sound no matter what you hear. Chidinma climbed down into the cramped space, clutching the envelope and flash drive to her chest. The pit was cold and dark. Obiora lowered the trapdoor, plunging her into complete darkness. Through the wooden slats, she could hear everything. Footsteps approaching the hut, fists pounding on the doorframe, and Chinidu's voice, cold as death. Obiora, we know she's here. Bring her out now, or we'll burn this hut to the ground with both of you inside. In the darkness, Chidinma pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from crying out. Her brothers had come to finish what they started, and this time they brought killers with them. Her father knew they would try to kill her. The land has minerals worth billions. And now her brothers found her hiding place with armed men. If your heart is racing, smash that like button and subscribe to Africantales by Zion. Drop a comment. What do you think is on that flash drive? The next chapter shows how she escapes her brothers, with mystical help. Share this video. Turn on notifications. Chidinma crouched in the dark pit, her heart hammering so loudly she feared they'd hear it. Through the wooden slats above, she heard her brothers enter the hut. Where is she, Obiora? Ikena's voice was sharp, threatening. I don't know what you're talking about, Obiora replied, his voice steady despite the fear Chidinma knew he must feel. Don't play games. Chinidu's footsteps moved around the small room. We saw tracks. Someone dragged from the river. That someone was our sister. Your sister drowned, Obiora said flatly. I tried to save her, but the current was too strong. The river took her. A lie. A brave lie to protect her. Then you won't mind if we search, one of the strange men said, his voice rough and menacing. Chidinma pressed herself into the corner of the pit, making herself as small as possible. She could hear them moving things. Calabashes being knocked over, fishing nets pulled down, boxes opened. Then footsteps approached directly above her head. What's this wooden panel on the floor? It was Chinidu's voice, right above her. Chidinma stopped breathing entirely. Storage for smoked fish, Obiora said quickly. It stinks. You don't want to open it. Actually, Chinidu's voice was cold. That's exactly why I need to open it. She heard him bend down, heard his hand touch the wooden handle. This was it. She was about to be discovered, killed. Chidinma closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to her father's spirit. Then, help, help me, snake, snake. A woman's scream, loud and terrified, came from the forest behind the hut. Chinidu jerked upright. The footsteps scattered. What was that? Ikena shouted. Someone's in trouble, one of the men said. Check it. Chinidu ordered. Quickly, the footsteps thundered out of the hut, running toward the scream. In the sudden silence, Obiora waited exactly 3 heartbeats, then threw open the trapdoor. Out! Now! Chidinma scrambled out, gasping. Who was that woman? I don't know, but we can't stay here. Obiora grabbed a small bag, stuffed dried fish and cloth inside, and slung it over his shoulder. He took Chidinma's hand firmly. Run! They burst out the back of the hut and plunged into the thick forest. Chidinma's legs were still weak from near drowning, but terror gave her strength. They ran through tall grass and dense trees. Thorns caught at her wrapper. Branches whipped her face. Her bare feet stumbled over roots and rocks. Behind them, she heard her brothers returning, shouting in fury. She's not there. Someone warned her. Find them. Don't let them escape. The sound of pursuit crashed through the forest after them. Obiora pulled Chidinma deeper into the bush, taking paths only a local would know. They crossed a stream, pushed through thick undergrowth, climbed over fallen logs. Chidinma's lungs burned. Her legs trembled. Just when she thought she couldn't run anymore, she stumbled and fell into a small clearing beside a stream. I can't, she gasped, collapsing to her knees. I can't run anymore. Obiora looked back at the forest, hearing the voices getting closer. His face was grim. Then Chidinma saw her. An old woman sat beside the stream, as if she'd been waiting. Her skin was dark as polished ebony, her hair streaked with white and pulled into a tight bun. She wore a flowing wrapper of deep red, embroidered with intricate gold patterns. Her eyes were sharp and piercing, but kind. "You are Chidinma," the woman said. Not a question, a statement. Chidinma could only nod, too exhausted to speak. "Your father was a wise man," the woman continued. "He and I knew each other many years ago. He told me about the land, about what he discovered, about the danger his sons would bring." "Who are you?" Chidinma whispered. "Someone who owes your father a debt. Someone who will help you now." The woman reached into the folds of her wrapper and pulled out a small wooden box, intricately carved with symbols Chidinma didn't recognize. "Take this. Inside is protection. Your father asked me to give it to you if his sons turned against you, as he feared they would." Chidinma took the box with trembling hands. The moment her fingers touched the carved wood, warmth spread through her body, chasing away the cold fear. "What's in it?" she asked. "Open it when you're safe. For now, follow me." The old woman stood with surprising agility and led them down a narrow slope into a hidden grove where trees grew so thick that sunlight barely penetrated. "Hide here," she instructed, pointing to a cluster of large stones. "Quickly now." They come. Chidinma and Obiora crouched behind the stones. The old woman remained standing in the clearing, calm as still water. Moments later, Chinidu and Ikena burst into the grove with their 3 hired men. All 5 carried machetes now, their faces twisted with rage. "Where is she?" Chinidu demanded. "Old woman, did you see a girl run through here?" The old woman looked at them with ancient eyes. "I've seen many things, but I wonder, do you see what you become? Answer the question." Ikena raised his machete threateningly. "You betray your own blood for money you haven't received," the old woman said calmly. "You work for men who will kill you once you're no longer useful. Your father will be ashamed." "Our father left us nothing," Chinidu shouted. "He gave everything to her, because he knew your hearts were already sold." Chinidu took a threatening step forward, then stopped. From a grove around them, a thick white mist began to rise. It curled around their feet, growing denser by the second. "What is this?" One of the hired men backed away nervously. The old woman pulled a small gourd from her wrapper and muttered words in a language older than Igbo. The mist thickened, swirling faster, until Chidinma could barely see the men through it. They began coughing, stumbling, swinging their machetes at nothing. "Now!" The old woman whispered to Chidinma and Obiora. "Run east. Follow the stream. Go!" Chidinma didn't hesitate. She and Obiora burst from behind the stones and ran through the magical fog that parted for them like a curtain. Behind them, her brother's shouts grew muffled and distant. They ran until the forest opened up again at the riverbank, the same river that had tried to drown her. The old woman appeared beside them, as if she'd simply materialized. "The water will hide you as it nearly took you. Jump, Chidinma. This time, the river will protect you." Chidinma looked at the water, fear rising. "I almost died in there. Before, you jumped in betrayal. This time, you jump in faith. Trust your father's protection." Obiora took her hand. "I'll go with you." Together, they jumped. The water swallowed them. But this time it felt different. The current didn't pull violently. Instead, it seemed to carry them gently, guiding them downstream away from danger. As they floated, hidden beneath the surface, Chidinma heard her brother's voices on the bank above. Where did they go? The river. They jumped in the river. Then they'll drown. Good. Let the water finish what we started. But the water didn't drown them. It carried them like a mother's arms, taking them far downstream to a safe landing. When they finally crawled onto a muddy bank, gasping and exhausted, the old woman was there again, impossible as that seemed. "You survived the river twice," she said. "Now go. Hide well. Your brothers won't stop, and neither will the men who hired them." "Who are you really?" Chidinma asked. The woman smiled enigmatically. "A friend of your father, a keeper of old ways, someone who believed the land should be protected from those who would rape it for profit." She pressed something into Chidinma's wet hand, a small charm, a string of carved beads. "Wear this. It will protect you from immediate harm." "But Chidinma, this is only temporary." You must find Officer Adeyemi. You must expose what your brothers have done. The flash drive your father left. It contains all the proof you need." Then the woman turned and walked into the forest. Within seconds, she'd vanished completely, as if she'd never existed. Chidinma looked at Obiora. "Did that really just happen?" He nodded slowly, his eyes wide. "Your father had powerful friends. Friends who practiced the old ways." Chidinma tied the charm around her wrist and clutched the wooden box and her father's envelope tightly. She was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. But her brothers were still hunting her. And somewhere in Enugu, dangerous men were waiting to see if Chinedu and Ikenna succeeded in their murder. The battle for her life, her inheritance, and her father's legacy was far from over. A mysterious old woman with mystical powers. The fog and the river protecting her. Even nature is on her side now. If you believe in spiritual protection, smash that like button and subscribe to Africantales by Zion. Comment. Do you think her father's spirit is guiding these protectors? The next chapter shows the final truth. What's on that flash drive and how she gets justice. Share this video. Turn on notifications. 3 days later, Chidinma sat in a small room at Enugu Police Headquarters, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Obiora stood guard outside. The charm from the old woman still hung on her wrist, warm against her skin. Officer Adeyemi entered carrying a laptop and the flash drive Chidinma's father had left her. His face was grim. "Miss Chidinma," he said, sitting across from her, "I've reviewed everything on this flash drive. What your father discovered. It's bigger than I imagined." He turned the laptop screen toward her. The screen showed geological survey reports, soil sample analyses, and mineral deposit maps. Chidinma's eyes widened as she read the figures. The land her father had left her, a seemingly ordinary plot in rural Enugu, sat atop one of the richest deposits of rare earth elements in West Africa. Elements used in smartphones, electric vehicles, renewable energy technology, worth an estimated 50 billion naira. "My God," Chidinma whispered. "Your father commissioned these surveys privately 5 years ago," Officer Adeyemi explained. "When the results came back, he knew he'd discovered something that would make him and you targets." The flash drive contained more than surveys. It held recorded conversations. Chidinma listened with growing horror as she heard voices she didn't recognize. "Chief Okafor won't sell. We need to pressure him. Use the sons. Promise them 200 million naira to eliminate the daughter and hand over the land rights." What about Chief Okafor himself? "Leave him alone for now. But if the sons can't handle the daughter, we'll handle all of them." The date on the recording was from 8 months ago. "Your brothers were approached long before your father died," Officer Adeyemi said quietly. "They were offered 200 million naira, 100 million each, to kill you and sign over mineral rights to a foreign mining company working with corrupt government officials." Chidinma felt sick. "They sold me for money they haven't even received?" The company paid them 20 million naira up front as good faith. The rest would come after you were eliminated. So it was real. Her own brothers had taken money to murder her. "There's more," Officer Adeyemi said. He played another recording, and this time Chidinma recognized the voices. "Chinedu, when should we do it?" Unknown voice. "After the will is read. Make it look like an accident. The river is perfect. Drownings happen." "Ikenna, and if she survives?" Unknown voice. "She won't. And if she does, we have people who'll finish the job. Just make sure it's done within a week." Chidinma's hands shook as the recording ended. "Your father recorded everything," Officer Adeyemi said. "He wore a wire for months, documented every threat, every conversation. He knew he couldn't trust his own sons. So he built a case against everyone involved. Why didn't he go to the police while he was alive? He was protecting you. If he'd exposed them then, you would have become a target immediately. By waiting, by changing his will and leaving you everything with this evidence, he gave you the means to destroy them all after he was gone." Officer Adeyemi stood up. "Chidinma, we have enough to arrest your brothers for attempted murder and conspiracy. We also have enough to bring down the mining company executives and 3 government officials involved in the scheme. Then do it, Chidinma said, her voice hard as stone. Arrest them all. The arrests happened swiftly. Chinedu and Ikenna were taken into custody at their family compound. When police arrived, they were packing bags, preparing to flee to Ghana with their advance payment money. Chinedu fought the officers. Ikenna tried to run. Both were subdued and handcuffed. This is a mistake. Chinedu shouted as they dragged him to the police van. Our sister drowned. We had nothing to do with it. But at the police station, when confronted with the recordings, the mineral surveys, and Obiora's eyewitness testimony of the riverbank attack, their story crumbled. Ikenna broke first. We didn't want to kill her, he sobbed in the interrogation room. But we had debts. Gambling debts. The men said they'd kill us if we didn't pay. Then they offered us the money. They said father's was unfair anyway, that we deserved compensation. So you try to murder your own sister for money, Officer Adeyemi said flatly. Ikenna buried his face in his hands. We thought she'd drown quickly. We didn't think she'd suffer. Chinedu remained defiant longer, but when shown video evidence of him meeting with mining company executives, he too confessed. Father betrayed us, he shouted. He left us nothing. What were we supposed to do? Not commit murder, Officer Adeyemi replied. The mining company executives were arrested next. 3 government officials who'd accepted bribes were suspended and charged. The entire conspiracy unraveled like thread from a torn cloth. The trial took 4 months. Chidinma sat in the Lagos High Court and watched her brothers sit in the defendant's box in prison clothes. They looked older, beaten down, hollow. When it was her turn to testify, she walked to the witness stand with her head high. She wore traditional Igbo attire, red and gold, her father's favorite colors. The charm still hung on her wrist. Miss Okafor, the prosecutor said, can you describe what happened at the riverbank? Chidinma looked directly at her brothers. They kicked me off a cliff into the Niger River. They watched me fall. I heard them say, let her drown, and we must finish what we started. They left me there to die. Chinedu closed his eyes. Ikenna stared at the floor. Why do you think they did this? Because they were paid to. Because they valued money more than family. Because they sold their souls and their sister for 200 million naira. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the geological surveys, the money trail. Obiora's testimony, the confessions. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned. On the charge of attempted murder, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of accepting bribes to commit violence, guilty. Chinedu and Ikenna were sentenced to 15 years in prison each. The mining executives received 20 years for conspiracy and corruption. The government officials were sentenced and banned from public office. 1 year later, Chidinma stood on the land her father had left her, but it wasn't the wild bushland it had once been. Now a host of a proper mining operation, legal, ethical, environmentally responsible. She'd partnered with a legitimate company that paid fair taxes and employed local workers. The wealth from the mining operation was more than she could have imagined, but Chidinma didn't hoard it. She built a hospital in Enugu in her father's name, built schools in 3 villages, provided scholarships for girls from poor families, created jobs for hundreds of people. The compound where she'd grown up became a center for women's education and empowerment, and she visited her brothers in prison exactly once. They sat across from her in the visiting room, wearing orange prison uniforms. Both had aged beyond their years. Prison had broken them. Chidinma, Chinedu said, his voice hoarse, we're sorry. We were greedy, foolish. We betrayed you, and we'll pay for it every day for the rest of our lives. I know, Chidinma said calmly. Will you ever forgive us? Ikenna asked, tears running down his face. Chidinma was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the river, the terror of drowning, the betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. I forgive you, she finally said, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry hate in my heart. Father taught me better than that. She stood to leave. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You tried to murder me. You'll serve your time. And when you're released, you'll find that I rebuilt everything Father wanted us to be without you." She walked out of the prison into bright sunlight. Obiora waited outside, and beside him stood the old woman in the red wrapper. Chidinma had never learned her name, but the woman appeared sometimes, checking on her, making sure she was safe. "Your father would be proud," the old woman said, smiling. Chidinma looked back at the prison once. "I hope so. He is. Trust me, I've spoken with him." The way she said it, Chidinma almost believed her. They drove back to Enugu, back to the thriving land, back to the legacy Chief Obinna Okafor had protected with his life. Chidinma stood at his grave that evening, laying fresh flowers. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered. "You saved me even after you were gone. You gave me everything I needed to survive. The inheritance, the truth, the protectors. I won't let you down." The wind rustled through the trees as if an answer. Chidinma smiled. She was no longer the scared girl who'd fallen into the river. She was Chief Okafor's daughter. Tested by betrayal, saved by love, and transformed by truth. She was a survivor. She was a protector of the land. And she would never, ever let anyone take what was hers again. The land had billions in minerals. Her brothers were paid to kill her and got 15 years in prison. And she became powerful while forgiving them. If justice gives you satisfaction, smash that like button and subscribe to Africantales by Zion. Drop a comment. Did she do the right thing for giving them but letting them face prison? This story proves that greed destroys families, but wisdom builds empires. She went from nearly drowning to becoming a millionaire protecting her community. Share this with everyone who believes good always defeats evil. Turn on notification for more African Tales by Zion.